Hello, one and all. This is Harry Kettle back again for Asian Persuasion MMA, and I'm here with a brand new series. This is the UK MMA Roundup, the first ever edition of the show. It is going to be very, very slow. It is going to be very, very cluttered. We're just going to kind of work through it and see where we go with it. There's no real format. There's no real script. I'm just going to talk at you about UK MMA for a couple minutes, 20 minutes, 10, 15, God knows. The highlights of the week. And then as we go on throughout the weeks, probably going to talk to you about maybe some prospects that we need to look at for the future, what's coming up, what's just been, all that kind of fun stuff. I'm sure we'll work it out as the weeks go on. Obviously, this was a big week. This was a big week for UK MMA, probably the biggest weekend, ironically, that we've had in a long time, and that is an understatement. We had Bellator 200 on Friday night in London at Wembley Arena, which I was there for. I was present at, so I can give you some kind of details of what it was like to be there live in person in comparison to watching on the broadcast. And then obviously we had UFC Liverpool up north at the Echo Arena, which was main evented by Stephen Thompson versus Darren Till. Very, very controversial fight card. Very interesting night, very interesting weekend, to say the least. And the only real place we can kick off is Bellator 200 on Friday. What we'll do is we'll run down a couple of the more notable results for British fighters on the card. We'll do that for UFC Liverpool 2, talk about what it means, the general kind of spectrum of how things are going for them, and we'll just see where it goes, kind of thing. Just bear with me. It's, like I said, it's going to be very rough around the edges, but we're going to see where we go with it. Obviously, Tom Meehan's kicked off the night in a featherweight fight against Mike Ekundayo. To say this was cringeworthy, to say this was disgusting, to say this was one of the worst things I've ever seen in person would be an understatement. I saw Tom Meehan's lose a couple months back at Cage Warriors 92 in London, so I knew a little bit about him going in. It's not usually the case with some of these prelim fights. And oh my God, did his arm get broken. I mean, watching it in real time, it looked like he kind of fell, and then the referee just stopped it. Didn't really make much sense. I was cage side, still couldn't really see through the cage or see specifically what was going on. And then they showed it on the replay, and there was just an audible gasp in unison from people that were there, that could see it. His arm kind of, he fell back, and his arm just virtually bent in half, and it looked like it was hanging by a thread. It looked like you could have just got a pair of scissors and snipped it off. It was disgusting, to say the least. It makes you think. It makes you really, think about the profession you're in, covering these MMA events. Obviously, I love doing it. That goes without saying. I'm still quite new to it, so I probably should have been prepared for something like that happening, but my God, it was disgusting. Hopefully he can bounce back from that. He's probably going to be out for at least 6 to 9 months. He walked past Media Row afterwards and was kind of holding it like that. It was interesting, to say the least. Yeah, not the nicest of things to see. Also on the prelims, we had Charlie Leary against Tom Green. Tom Green, teammate of Erin Chalmers. He's been helping Aaron out with a lot of different bits and bobs. Apparently, we heard about that from Aaron in his post-fight. He wasn't quite so successful, fell to TKO via punches right at the death of the second round. We seem to be getting a lot of those kind of finishes lately where, I don't know, fighters just seem to be reaching that next level or bringing something out of themselves right at the end of a round, right at the death. I don't know what it is. Maybe that's just the progression of the sport or something like that. Who knows? And then we'll move on to the main card. We had Linton Vassell, someone who is always game. Linton Vassell is always someone who is game for any fight, anywhere. And coming into this one against Phil Davis. Phil Davis, someone who you could argue is probably one of the best light heavyweights in the world. You could also argue that's not as much of a statement or a compliment as it would be with other divisions. That makes sense. Light heavyweight is not a place that's rich with talent right now. That goes without saying. First 2 rounds of this were incredibly fun. Both guys just swinging at each other with absolute haymakers, and it felt like if one of them landed, it's going to be big trouble for either guy. Unfortunately for MMA fans in the UK, it was Phil Davis who got the KO head kick. Not the kind of finish that you're used to seeing from Phil Davis. He's inconsistent, as I mentioned on the preview show, when it comes to things like, is he going to have a really impressive performance? Is he going to grind out the decision victory? It goes back and forth. You never really know which kind of camp he's going to fall into. Linton Vassell naturally looked devastated. He's always going to be devastated with a loss like that, especially to someone like Phil Davis. But what can you do as an elite level light heavyweight? And it's all about progression. It's all about learning from your mistakes, learning from what you can do better. If we take a quick look at Linton Vassell, 34 years of age, the Swarm is now. He's on a 2-fight skid, but those 2 fights were against Ryan Bader and Phil Davis, 2 of arguably the best light heavyweights in the world, as I've just mentioned. 2 guys who probably should still be in the UFC. Quite surprising that they're not. Prior to that, he was on a 3-fight win streak. This isn't the end. We're in an era now where being in your mid-30s is hardly something that's a problem. I mean, even we've seen like Michael Bisping, another British fighter, obviously, he waited until 36, 37 until he finally won the middleweight title. No real comparison between the two. I understand that in terms of their styles, but the Brits have grit, the Brits have determination. It's a popular theme that we're going to be running through for however long this show lasts. It is one of the things that you need to remember about British fighters, and it's not just a stereotype. We seem to have that just extra something about us that makes us bred for those kind of wars. And even though Linton Vassell went down like he did and it looked nasty, he gave a thumbs up when he came past Media Row, and that's the kind of thing you'd expect from a guy like that. Moving on, we had Mike Shipman defeating Carl Noon in 10 seconds. This is the problem with matchmaking. Now, is it a bad thing that Mike Shipman won in 10 seconds? No, it's not. He's a new guy. He's someone that Bellator can build up. He's someone that Bellator can kind of enhance and promote. That's all great, but Carl Noon hadn't fought in what felt like forever. Coming up against a guy in Mike Shipman who is a killer. That is what he is. He is not literally, figuratively, of course. It's been a long day. Mike Shipman is someone who has lethal power in his hands. He'll come swinging out of the gate. And, obviously, as you can see, he's one of those guys that if you blink, then you're going to miss it. Really impressive performance 10 seconds in. I'm really excited to see where he goes from here. He's already had some notable names on his resume that he's defeated up to this point. So God knows where he can go from here. We move on to probably one of the most controversial fights of the night, fights of the weekend, fights of the month, maybe. Erin Chalmers, former Geordie Shore star. Now, for those of you who don't know what Geordie Shore is, it's the English version of Jersey Shore. For those of you who don't know what Jersey Shore is, it's a show where a bunch of 20-something, 30-somethings go out and get drunk, for lack of a better word, and document their lives in a reality TV show kind of format. Erin Chalmers was on that show, decided to give it all up in search of an MMA career, and he's 4-0. That's the story to me. The story isn't someone coming from a reality television show. The story is someone who went after something that he wanted. He wanted a different career for himself, and he went out and he got that career for himself. And, if you want to talk about the fight, let's talk about the fight. It was against Ash Griffiths. There was going to be some bad blood between these two guys. Anyway, Ash Griffiths, he didn't make weight. Always a problem. Always something that's going to be seen as a big issue. But you've got Erin Chalmers, who is someone that Bellator clearly want to get behind. I mean, he was just a Bama fighter for his first 3 fights. Nothing wrong with Bama, obviously. But the fact that Bellator wanted to promote him this quickly was great. He faced adversity in this fight. People who said it was rigged or whatever, get out. Really, just get out. Stop listening, because it wasn't rigged. Someone who takes a big knee like that, you're not going to predetermine, taking a big knee like that. This isn't WWE as much as some people want it to be. It's just not. Aaron showed that he's got, the steely determination. I did think that Ash Griffiths could have maybe protected the choke a little bit better. He didn't do much to fight his way out of it. I know it would have been really difficult to fight his way out of it, but it didn't really seem like he was giving it as all in that sense. But that being said, Erin Chalmers is someone who's going to get a good pop from the crowd. He did get a good pop from the crowd. I spoke to him after the fights in the scrum, and I asked him, what kind of things do you have in your game that you haven't showed people yet, people haven't really had a chance to see? And he said, is Muay Thai. He wants to throw kicks at people. It's one of his favourite things to do in training, but he hasn't actually been able to showcase it yet because he's just had such quick, effective, lethal finishes. And that makes sense. What are you going to do if you're knocking people out with such efficiency like that? You're not going to all of a sudden try and change things up if it doesn't need changing up. There's Baby Slice as a possible next fight for him. Probably a good idea, probably a good fight. We've got CM Punk fighting next weekend at UFC 225. That should be interesting if he loses, because we have heard rumblings of Chalmers versus Punk being something that may happen in the not-so-distant future. If Punk wants to continue on with his MMA career, we will have to wait and see. Obviously, Erin Chalmers might need to step up an opponent soon. He's been facing guys with more losses than they have wins. But let's not forget, that's what people do. That is what fighters who are just starting out on their career tend to do. They are booked in positions where they can look strong. They are booked against opponents that they are probably expected to beat. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need to be able to enhance their talents against people of equal or lesser stature than them. That is something that people fail to realize that MMA and pro wrestling have in common. That's a big component of both, things. Enhancement matches. You want to make the guy look good. Is that necessarily a positive thing? No, because in MMA it can go wrong very quickly. We saw that with Aaron Pico, even though he's managed to bounce back. But all in all, for me, Erin Chalmers is someone who is marketable. He can be built upon. He can keep, headlining shows potentially even for Bellator. He's a Bellator exclusive fighter now. There is more good than bad to this, and that's just a fact. And the co-main event featured the last kind of British fighter on this card, Michael Venom Page, MVP, beating David Rickles. This, I did feel like I was transported to a WWE arena. You had Rickles coming out in these kind of caveman shorts that didn't even seem legal for an MMA fight, and looked like they belonged in boxing, who retired towards the end of the second round, retired because of an eye injury. People who were criticising him, again, do you even know what it's like to step inside the octagon? I certainly don't. I don't know what it would be like if I got an injury that was that bad, and that if I knew that things were going to get worse from there, would I want to continue on? Probably not. MVP is a star. He just is. MVP versus Paul Daly is the fight to make. That fight probably should have happened on this card. If you really want to test MVP and see how far he can go, now is the time. He's in his early 30s. He's not in his early 20s anymore. This isn't a guy you can build up for 10 to 15 years. This is a guy you kind of need to pull the trigger on quite quickly. And why wouldn't you? He's got the charisma. He's got the Anderson Silva type flair inside the octagon. He messes with people, and then that might come back to bite him one day, but it hasn't so far. This is what we need. If you were in that arena on last Friday night at Wembley Arena, you will know what kind of reaction MVP got. This is not someone who you just throw in there against guys who are 0-5, 0-6, 0-7. This is someone that you can build up, and they have built up so far, to face guys like David Rickles, who is no mug. He is not someone who you can just roll over. I mean, it looked like that if you were kind of a first-time watcher because of the retirement. But again, you don't really know the situations and circumstances involved. Post-fight scrum, MVP came across as a really nice guy, really well-dressed, well-spoken. He seems like the kind of person you can deal with interviews really well and deal with his business inside the octagon. And he had the Infinity Gauntlet. And that is an automatic victory for me. That's almost a victory on top of what he did against David Rickles. That is equally as impressive in many ways. That's it for Bellator 200. Personal experiences, for me, really fun. Really enjoyed the card. It was a card that people went into it thinking this isn't really worthy of being Bellator 200. I can understand that. I can see where people are coming from with that. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that it was bad. That doesn't mean that it wasn't enjoyable. You ask 100% of the people that watched it, I guarantee 80 to 85 would have said they enjoyed it, and probably the 10 to 15 that didn't would have likely been saying that they didn't enjoy it because there were too many squash matches, so to speak, which is an understandable criticism. But nonetheless, really fun card. So a lot of good British talent on display. And that takes us to UFC Fight Night Liverpool. Now, there are two stories, really, maybe even 3 or 4 that we can get to, that we can talk about. Molly McCann gets choked out in the second round against Gillian Robertson. Disappointing, to say the least. Really something that was unfortunate, given that she was the only other Scouser really on the card apart from Darren Till. The referee probably could have stopped it a little bit sooner. I probably would have thought. Was it too much too soon? I'm not really sure about that. I think maybe Molly was just going in there with a lot of momentum, a lot of adrenaline. I don't know how much she researched about Gillian Robertson. I think she was more interested in the fight itself as opposed to who it was going to be. I think she would have taken that fight against pretty much anyone. I mean, it was UFC Liverpool. It was in her backyard. Wasn't much of a reason for her to not take the fight, really. But Gillian Robertson proved, even at catchweight, why she's so ruthless, why she could potentially even be a force in the UFC moving forward. Then we move on to the main fight on the preliminary card. We had Tom Breeze returning and delivering a vicious TKO on Dan Kelly for 3 minutes and 33 seconds of the very first round. So glad to see someone like Tom Breeze back and doing what he loves at middleweight. Middleweight division, it's good. A lot of good people in there, but it's no lightweight. There's room for someone like Tom Breeze to kind of surge his way up there. Now that he's had this kind of win, maybe even put him on a main card, not necessarily as a pay-per-view, put him on the main card of an FS1 card or a Fox card or something like that, or even an ESPN card when we get there in January, and see what this guy can do, see what he's capable of. He's a very cool, very calm, very collected customer. He was rebounding from his first loss against Sean Strickland, which was, as we said, nearly 2 years ago. And he got performance of the night, understandably, for this victory. He's 11-1. He is 26 years old, from Birmingham, England. I mean, the experience isn't necessarily there, but that does not mean that he can't do some really big things moving forward. That doesn't mean that he can't become another one of the UK's big stars, like Darren Till, like Michael Bisping before him. He's got potential. There's something there. Then we had Darren Stewart, first fight on the main card, getting a TKO victory due to punches at 1 minute and 47 seconds of the very second round, not very first round. Broke down in tears afterwards. He was on a skid. It didn't look like he was going to get given another opportunity, but given how good he looked against Julian Marquez, I'm not really surprised to see that he was given another chance to show what he can do. Really impressed with Darren Stewart. I think, again, middleweight, another possible contender there. He's someone who can kind of rise up through the ranks. He's got passion. He's got determination. He's got a bit of personality about him. Again, really, really promising. We go to Arnold Allen with arguably the comeback of the year so far. It's up there, certainly up there. Another really fun guy to watch. Mads Bernal probably deserved it, definitely deserved it up until the choke. He just kind of let himself go, and then he didn't even look that bothered afterwards. It was almost like he was just waiting for the fight to end, and he let his guard down, got complacent, allowed Arnold Allen to get in there and get the victory. Really nice victory. Someone who flies under the radar a lot. I think he's a featherweight fighter. He's got a record of 13-1. He hasn't lost since June 2014, and that was with Cage Warriors. He's been on a bit of a tear as of late. Last victory came against Macklin and Kearney. He's ready, after a year-long plus layoff. For him to come back and for him to have this kind of win, it's a statement of intent. It really is. It's a statement of what he can do and what maybe value he can be to the UFC. Craig White, he wasn't ready for it. He wasn't ready to face someone like Neil Magny, and that's the harsh fact of the matter. But he put up a really good display. He showed a lot of heart. But when you're coming up against someone in the top 10 of the welterweight division, which is full of killers, that's what's going to happen. Hopefully he can go back to Cage Warriors or someone like that and start rebuilding his momentum, maybe for another shot at the UFC somewhere down the line. Or maybe he gets another go in the UFC based on the fact that he took this fight on short notice, basically. We will see what happens from there. And now we arrive at the main event. I need a drink before we get to this. The main event of the evening, Darren Till defeating Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Firstly, that walkout, oh my God, it was remarkable. It was the best walkout I think I've seen ever. I wasn't there live, unfortunately, but it came across like the best walkout I've ever seen. Sweet Caroline, blaring out, 8,000 fans completely on their feet. it was remarkable. It was a sight to be seen, and it validated why Darren Till wanted to bring the UFC to Liverpool. It made a lot of sense for them to go there, given it's a fighting town, it's a fighting city, it always has been. Now, the actual fight. When I first saw it, when I was watching it live in time, I thought Wonderboy won the first 3 rounds without much of a debate. I thought that he landed the cleaner shots, even though Darren was the one coming forward a little bit more. I thought that because I did think Till won 4th, and then I think because Till got the knockdown in the 5th, that might sway it. I thought on the judges' scorecards, that might be, if the crowd were going to influence it and it was going to be 48-47 to Till, I thought the knockdown was going to be one of the reasons why it helped. I thought that he didn't seem to want to pull the trigger due to the fear of a counterattack in the 4th and 5th rounds, but he had him against the cage, and it looked like there wasn't really a better time for him to do it than there. He was ready. I know that Wonderboy could have had the counter attacks, but it didn't feel like he was really going to be able to provide much pressure or do much in that kind of position, in that cramped position against someone of Till's size. Now, when the scores were read out, 49-46 is an exaggeration. It is. It's really that simple. I don't think that Till won 49-46. That's a stretch, to say the least. I'd have to go back and watch it, but obviously the statistics suggest that Till was the one who had more momentum. He kind of went forward more. He had octagon control. You can argue what that means, kind of. It's a tough one. I think I'd have to go back and watch it to be able to make a definitive decision. My initial response was Wonderboy won. As a UK MMA fan, am I disappointed to see Darren Till win? No, it's great. It's great for the scene. It's great for everything that British MMA is trying to build. The video of him cutting weight was disturbing. It was disturbing. It was something that nobody wants to see. It's something that is the biggest problem in mixed martial arts now and has been for quite some time. We need to be able to contain this in whatever way we can. I'm not really sure how that happens, but that's just a fact. We need to be able to sort this out because otherwise someone's going to die. And that's not an exaggeration. Someone is going to die. The amount of MMA that we have on a week-to-week basis now, someone's going to pass away from weight cutting. I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. But it's a problem, and it's something that needs to be addressed immediately. Moving forward for Darren Till, it's hard to judge what they're going to do because you've got the interim title fight next weekend, Colby Covington versus Rafael dos Anjos. You had Till himself say that he felt Wonderboy deserved another title shot more than him because he missed weight. Makes sense in a way. I think what I would like to see personally is the next fights need to be, in my opinion, I wouldn't mind seeing Wonderboy and Maya. I think that would be quite fun. 2 very respectful guys, and sometimes you don't really need animosity for that kind of thing to work necessarily. Magny against Ponzinibbio, I think, would be fun. Obviously, Ponzinibbio was meant to fight Usman, didn't. I know Magny wants to fight Usman, but that's kind of getting off topic anyway. I would bet Usman against Darren Till. Usman against Till, and the winner of that fight fights for the title next. The reason I'm saying that is because they've both got really good win streaks going at the moment. Tyron Woodley's probably going to fight the winner of Dos Anjos and Covington in order to unify the championship. So that opens the door perfectly for either Usman or Till, depending on who would win that, to then fight Woodley for the belt. Makes all the sense in the world to me. I think that's the way they need to go. And yeah, that's logical in my mind. I mean, Usman is a great wrestler. Till is a great striker. 2 stars that will mesh together. Maybe not well, because you could argue that Usman will just line him for 25 minutes if it is a main event. But that's MMA for you. I mean, Till knows that a wrestler is going to be his biggest problem. So if he doesn't prepare for that, it's his own fault. The weekend as a whole, wonderful. Great for MMA in this country. Personally, Bellator was a great event. It was really, really good to just see Bellator do something, make some noise, because they don't often make noise, and they've got a couple stars in their hands now that they can really push. British as well, Chalmers and MVP. UFC Liverpool, top to bottom, not a great card, but you had Darren Till winning in the main event in a fight, which I enjoyed. Some people said it was boring. Still found it very entertaining and very fun. That's good enough for me. Speaking of cards, we've got UFC Utica coming up tonight, actually. And Nathaniel Wood, one of the probably hottest prospects in British MMA right now, will be making his official UFC debut. That is my prospect to watch for the week. If you are in any way, shape or form interested in the Utica card, make sure you tune in early doors to see this kid. He is something else. He is a force to be reckoned with, and it's going to be interesting to see what he can pull off. Anyway, that's 25 minutes we've gone for, me rambling on. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you liked and what you didn't like about this format, what maybe I could do more of, what maybe I should do less of. I was up till 6 a.m. this morning working, so that's probably the reason why I've been so kind of drab and why I might look a little bit tired. Yeah, let us know what you think. We're going to try and aim to do these on a week-to-week basis. And we've got Akalesh and Leon doing some other bits and bobs in terms of recaps as well. We're going to really up our content load. Asian Persuasion MMA, we're nearing 5,000 likes. Can't thank you enough for that. We just want to be able to provide great MMA coverage for all of you. And we're learning as we go on. I'm definitely learning as I go on. I know that for sure. And Aaron Muro says, thanks to you, Aaron Muro. Thank you for tuning in. Everyone who has tuned in, we will hopefully see you next week. This has been the UK MMA Roundup.